Hello and welcome to the Latch Lounge podcast. Today we're going to be talking about bad advice from pediatricians. You would not believe how often I spend time during my consults with moms going over advice that they've gotten from their doctor, the pediatrician in the hospital, etc., and kind of deciding whether or not it is useful, neutral, or harmful advice. Very common for new moms to trust their pediatricians implicitly, and this can start breastfeeding out in a bit of a less than optimal way if the advice you're getting is crappy advice. So we're going to go into some of the common bad advice that I see new moms get and what you can do if you're unsure about the advice you're getting from your pediatrician. I'm Amber Ginn, IBCLC, and empowering moms in their breastfeeding journey is what I do. Breastfeeding comes with a lot of opinions. Your doctor, your mother-in-law, that random lady at the park, and it can leave you feeling like you're constantly second-guessing yourself. That's why I created the Latch Lounge podcast, to cut through the noise and give you real, judgment-free, no BS advice that actually helps. Whether you're nursing, pumping, or combo feeding, this is the place for you to get the real support and information you deserve. So grab a drink, get comfy, and let's get into it. So let's talk about why so many new moms are getting bad advice from their pediatrician. Why is this happening? Short answer is pediatricians are not breastfeeding experts most of the time. If you're lucky, you may come across a pediatrician who is also a board certified lactation consultant like myself, but most of them are pediatricians. They're trained in a lot of different areas, which makes it difficult for them to have been trained in breastfeeding, in addition to all the other stuff that they know. I am by no means creating this episode to cause any beef with pediatricians or to overlook the important role that they play in our child's lives when it comes to medical care and all of that. It's just simply to highlight the fact that we oftentimes have pediatricians giving breastfeeding advice to new moms as if they are trained in breastfeeding. And a lot of times this advice can be really disruptive. So let's talk about the top 5 bad pediatrician takes and better reframes so that you can be sure the advice you're getting is useful. So number one thing that I hear so frequently, you need to space out baby's feeds so baby learns to eat more at once. So breastfeeding is not meant to be scheduled like bottle feedings. Spacing feedings with breastfeeding can actually cause a lot of issues because we're overriding what baby is telling us. If baby's eating frequently, there's a reason for that. Either baby needs a lot of calories or they're cluster feeding and they're helping our bodies get the signals that we need to make more milk. When we try to override that and space out feedings based on a schedule like you would use with a formula fed baby, we can wreck our supply and we can end up with a fussy baby who is pretty much inconsolable between feeds. And that is not what we ever want happening. So if your pediatrician is telling you that you need to space out your feeds, do your own research and decide if that feels like it resonates with you. I'm by no means saying any of this advice is advice that you shouldn't follow. Rather, I'm just providing context on why it might not be the most supportive advice for your breastfeeding goals. What you should do instead, in most cases, rather than spacing out feeds on a schedule, is to follow baby's cues. Frequent shorter feeds are fine. What we really want to be focused on is that baby is gaining weight and that their output, as in poops and pees, are on track. If those things are happening, you can feed your baby at whatever interval works for you and baby. You can do a combination of baby-led feeding, as in you feed baby on demand, and maybe a little bit more structured if you're working towards a goal where you're sleeping through the night and you need to have baby on a slightly different schedule. Or if you're doing something like you are out during the day and baby's with dad and they're drinking from a bottle, we're all doing our best. And so there's no one-size-fits-all answer, but broadly suggesting to all new moms that they should space out feeding so that babies get used to eating more at once isn't supportive of baby's natural instincts. It isn't supportive of our supply in most cases. Number 2 is one that gets a lot of heat in the breastfeeding and pediatrician world, and that is your baby's weight is low, so we need to start supplementing with formula. Those can be the most horrible words to hear from your doctor when you're a new mom who is hoping to breastfeed. So let's get into why this is not something we should take at face value. Every doctor has an opinion on what is too much weight to lose. So we have a lot of factors that can go into baby's weight loss in the first 24 hours of life, in the first week of life, etc. And we want to make sure that we're understanding all the different contributing factors to why baby lost weight before we just start throwing formula into the mix. The number one thing I see not considered when it comes to weight loss is prolonged fluid exposure during labor. That means if your labor was longer than 6 to 8+ hours and you were attached to fluids the entire time, that means your baby had exposure to fluids during that time as well. What we can see happen is babies come out, they weigh a certain amount, and then they lose the water weight that they gained from the fluid exposure during your labor. And then we start to panic because we're seeing, 9, 10, 11% weight loss, and that looks really scary. So I want to always caution you that if you're being pushed formula for weight loss concerns, let's think about what happened during labor, what happened afterward, and go from there. What is or isn't a concerning amount of weight loss is really between you and your husband or your partner and the decision making because you are the parents. We definitely don't want to see weight loss above, 10, 11%. That's when we start to get concerned. But I've had doctors start pushing formula with weight loss as low as 6%. If your baby's lost 6% of their body weight, that's within the realm of normal. Obviously, we do have different considerations, so that's not a blanket statement. It's not something that you can just take and apply to your situation because there could be other considerations that you guys have going on, and it's always super important to get personalized advice when it comes to your feeding journey. So, if you're being told to supplement formula without figuring out why baby has lost weight, your doctor's giving you bad advice. If it's something related to fluid exposure, we definitely want to keep that in mind when making our decisions about introducing formula to supplement for weight loss or not. So if your baby has not gained weight like your doctor would prefer, we definitely want to assess their latch and milk transfer abilities before pushing formula. If you're feeling like your baby's doing bad on the bottle, as in they're having a lot of fluid leakage, they're making funny sounds, they're having a lot of colic, gas, reflux, etc., we want to dig into what's causing that before we just start throwing formula into the mix. If your goal is to breastfeed exclusively and you're being told to supplement formula, please remember that there are always options for getting that extra calories into your baby that can be less disruptive to your goals of breastfeeding than using a bottle. We can do things like cup feeding, syringe feeding. You can use like a little feeding tube attached to your finger and do some finger feeding. So you always have options, so don't feel like you're stuck. The third piece of advice I get is kind of twofold. It's either if breastfeeding hurts, just tough it out, it'll get better. Or it's the opposite. If breastfeeding hurts, just stop breastfeeding. Duh. And that's all really bad advice. So if you're being told that your pain in breastfeeding should be toughed out, or that if it's hurting, you should just give up, both of those things are bad advice. Breastfeeding should not hurt. I could say that so many times, but I can say something else that might surprise you because a lot of other IBCLCs seem kind of hesitant to say this. Breastfeeding pain is common. I don't think as many of us running practices would be so busy if breastfeeding pain wasn't as common as it is. So if you're being told that you need to tough it out or give up, that's not true. You need to work with a lactation professional who can dig in on why you're feeling pain and help you find solutions so that you can have comfortable breastfeeding. Breastfeeding should be comfy, it should be enjoyable, it should not suck, it should not be painful. So, number 4. This piece of advice really irks me as someone who, when I had my first child, I was a teenager, I went back to school. So this type of advice can be really problematic. It's when you go to talk to your doctor and you're saying, I'm returning to work. And they're like, if you're returning to work, you have to stop breastfeeding. Yeah, obviously super problematic. A lot of doctors just don't know any better. And they have this bit of advice of, well, if you're returning to work, you might as well just stop breastfeeding. Let's just do formula. It's going to be easier. Definitely not the case. If you want to do formula when you return to work, that's completely fine, but you do not have to. It is completely possible to maintain your supply and feed baby express breast milk while returning to work. With planning and support, like working with a lactation consultant, you can make sure that you have a good schedule for pumping, you understand how to store the milk, and you have a good schedule for feeding baby the pumped milk while they're at daycare or with the family. So completely possible. Do not let that piece of bad advice hang you up. So the final piece of bad advice that we're going to talk about is a doctor telling you that you don't have enough milk and your supply is low because your baby wants to eat frequently. This obviously ties back into the first one of that we need to space feeds out. This is also BS. Your baby wanting to eat frequently is not indicative of your supply being low. Your baby not gaining weight and not having good output, as in pees and poops, is a sign that baby's not getting enough milk because you don't have enough milk. So if you're not seeing that happen, baby eating frequently on its own is not reason enough for us to believe that you don't have enough milk or that your supply is somehow inefficient. So if your baby's eating frequently, no big deal. If your doctor is telling you that you are not making enough milk because baby is eating frequently, that is not true. Working with a lactation professional who understands normal infant feeding patterns can help you feel confident that your baby is eating enough and help you feel comfortable with following baby's feeding cues rather than feeling like you have to have them on a strict schedule. You're not crazy if you leave your pediatrician appointment feeling confused. I do a lot of rehabilitation of mom's confidence after pediatrician check-ins because they get a lot of bad advice. And it can be bad advice related to breastfeeding in the early days, but that bad advice can carry over throughout your entire breastfeeding journey if you don't have a pediatrician who is supportive of breastfeeding. So I would highly encourage you, if you're getting flack from your pediatrician or you feel like the advice that they're giving you is not good, to find a new pediatrician. Try to find a new pediatrician who is breastfeeding informed and who is supportive of breastfeeding moms. If that's not possible, please remember that you don't have to do everything your practitioners say, whether it's me as your lactation consultant, whether it's your pediatrician, whether it's your obstetrician. You are the boss of your journey and you don't have to listen to anyone. If you get advice and you feel like it's bad advice, like it's not resonating with you, feel free to throw it out. If you get advice that you're like, I don't know about that advice, feel free to do more research and see if you can get clarity about if that advice resonates with you or not. So to close this out, if you're getting bad advice, feel free to ignore it. Feel free to do more research. Feel free to reach out to someone like myself and get a second opinion if it's related to breastfeeding. You're the boss of your breastfeeding journey, not your pediatrician. And the good news and the bad news about being the boss is that you're responsible for the outcomes of the decisions you make. That's why it's so important to not just de facto listen to pediatricians because their advice might not be advice that's grounded in fact when it comes to breastfeeding. Again, this episode is not remotely to be rude or dismissive of pediatricians and the great work that they do. It's simply to make you aware that they are not the boss of your breastfeeding journey. You are. If you get advice that doesn't resonate with you, do more research and make decisions that make you feel confident and empowered. That's it for today, Mama. If this episode helped, don't stop here. Get even more support at thelatchlink.com. Need one-on-one help? Did you know your insurance covers free lactation care? If you have Aetna, Anthem, Cigna, Blue Cross Blue Shield, or UHC, you can get free virtual lactation care right from the comfort of your home. Check your coverage and book your session today at thelatchlink.com. And if you're looking for instant help with latch issues, grab my course, Latch Legend, for step-by-step fixes you can use right now. If you love this episode, subscribe and leave a review. It's the best way to help other moms find the support they deserve. Until next time, trust yourself, trust your baby, and know you are doing an amazing job.